Hour. Steve Brown, head of the ACLU in Rhode Island. Steve, you want to come on in? Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so UHIP.
UHIP.
Yesterday, I think we were instructed to understand that in the governor's first 1,000 days, everything was good in Rhode Island. It was a beautiful day, the sun was shining, except for at UHIP. We seem to not be able to. And Saul Kaplan comes on every Monday, and we talk about innovation and technology. And I think he's amazed at how troubled the state is in dealing with the technology of UHIP.
UHIP is a big problem. It's now been a year since the rollout occurred. Problems began then, and they are continuing, and that's why we're going back into court now. Yeah, it's really hard to imagine just how deep-seated these problems are, because it seems as soon as one problem gets solved, another one emerges. And that's the latest thing that happened, and we've been concerned from the beginning, ever since we entered into a settlement agreement with the state back in February. They were supposed to meet certain benchmarks in making sure that people were timely getting their benefits in the way that federal law requires. They weren't meeting those benchmarks. They still aren't meeting them. What was of great concern to us this past month, and why we're back in court, is the state isn't even in a position now to tell us how well they're doing. They're supposed to be issuing monthly reports to us explaining how many people have been getting their benefits on time, if they haven't been getting them on time, how long it took for them to get it. And they acknowledged to us just a couple weeks ago that the reports aren't working either. So it's a real serious problem.
So we're a technology company and we're a content company. That's what we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So technology works or it doesn't work, and you can fix it or you can't fix it. Is it catastrophic? Is it that UHIP simply, have you had any experts weigh in? Is it that the system is completely broken? And some have told me that it's never going to work.
Well, we don't have any experts. We've just been relying on the law. You know, the state, I think understandably, is itself upset with Deloitte, which is the vendor responsible for UHIP. I think most of the problems at this point do point to the company as just screwing this up. But at the same time, the state does have an obligation under federal law to meet these requirements. I mean, we're talking about needy families, hungry families.
You're talking about the poorest, I mean, functionally the poorest of the poor in Rhode Island.
Very poor people who need this help in order to get food on the table. And so whether it's Deloitte that's responsible for it, there's still this problem. People need to eat. And we're concerned that there's this gap occurring and not getting fixed. And that's why we're going back into court and hoping that the judge will come up with some additional remedies.
Who's this before?
This is before Judge Smith
In
federal
court.
court.
And he's got a number of powers that he can implement. And you've been in federal court on special master situations in which de facto the system is so broken they put somebody really in place of the state. Are we close to that, asking for a special master and asking for some real leadership on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Our attorneys in the case, and it's not just the ACLU, there's a national welfare rights organization that has been involved in this case, helping us bring this lawsuit. And the attorneys for both these organizations are talking right now, I mean, even as we speak, trying to figure out what we should be recommending to the court to implement. There's actually going to be an in-chambers conference tomorrow with the judge. And I think at that point we'll have a better sense, you know, what are the additional things that can be done to make this better for these families.
And at what point, I mean, it's been a year, I mean, we're talking about very significant implications when folks have literally, I mean, beyond no safety net. These are folks who are living in the best of situations, in oftentimes from receiving payment to receiving payment. And in many cases, in UHIP, a significant portion of them have been delayed by weeks and months.
Yes.
And that's catastrophic. Can't pay rent, can't pay for food. Is there any nonprofit stepping up? Is the state stepping up to create a safety net for these folks to say, we understand our technology is flawed, but you can come over here and get the paper version, at least in the short term?
Well, there have been some small fixes that have been proposed and implemented to try to deal with the many problems that have occurred. Looking at the figures to the extent that they can be trusted at this point, it appears that the state was making progress and may still be making progress with new applications coming in, but there's still a large backlog of people. So you do have people who've been waiting weeks or even longer. And I think one of the issues that will be discussed by our attorneys is what are concrete steps that can be taken to try to help these people while these computer problems get addressed.
UHIP was supposed to bring sort of all of the different technologies related to social services together into one streamlined process and one sort of gateway for people to get access to things. A number of things that we saw is that HealthSource, which is also tied into this, has numerous flaws in it, in functionality and working, and also the fact that most of it doesn't work in a mobile environment. Most people, especially in the Hispanic community, mobile is their primary connectivity to the internet. And if you don't have a mobile version, I mean, this is kind of 101. If you don't have a mobile version of your website, most days here on Go Local Live, we're 75% mobile. How do these things happen? Is there, who's the adult looking over these things, taking these things into account, just doing some basic math? I don't care what Deloitte proposes to you. All you've got to do is go to about 400 websites in the country and see that most people want to access information in a mobile environment.
Yeah, well, again, I can't speak to the process of how Deloitte got chosen. You are right to point out that our lawsuit has focused specifically on what are called SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits,
right,
for the poor. But you're right, UHIP encompasses a number of other programs, including HealthSource Rhode Island, and we've heard of similar types of complaints about that. I can't tell you how serious they are, but you're right, it's a problem that exceeds just the particular issue that we're dealing with, and it does demonstrate that something needs to be done. I'm not sure what it is. I'm no technology expert, but people are hurting as a result of this program, and I think the state really needs to step up and do more because I don't think we can count on Deloitte to do it for them.
The governor's been on record a number of times. She's been here. She's been on the record saying, listen, nobody's more frustrated than she is. If I could fire them, I would. A narrative on that level. But at some point, if it's not working, it's now been a year since functionally the project was launched, and it was fairly identifiable as catastrophic from day one. And it looked like the spring might have some improvements, but now, as you guys have identified, that the process is maybe even more broken, that they can't even do reports. At what point is it from your standpoint in representing these folks as the ACLU, where you're pulling a Khrushchev and pulling your shoe off and banging the table and saying, hey, listen, we don't really care about whose fault it is. We don't really care about your patients or your reelection. We need this thing fixed.
Yeah. Well, it's not up to us. Ultimately, it's up to the judge to decide what are appropriate remedies. And as I said, we're going to be considering what we really should be recommending. I mean, there is a problem. The problem, of course, was at the beginning. They gave very rosy pictures of how the rollout was occurring when it really wasn't rosy. And again, not being a technology expert, I'm not sure where where you cross that line where you just say, all right, stop, we need to do something else. The real concern now is, a year has gone by, to bring somebody else in and sort of start from scratch, creates a whole host of problems of its own. So, I don't know.
Or not.
Well, I think the time, there's a time frame, a necessary time frame in bringing somebody in. So, but the bottom line is, federal law says you must provide benefits to these individuals within certain periods of time. They're needy, they're hungry. This is a very important program to help put food on the table. Whatever needs to be done in order to ensure that these people are getting what they're entitled to.
When do you think Judge Smith will give some direction on this? Is there a timeline? Do you get a sense of his frustration in hearing this case?
No, this is really new. We've been trying to work for months with the state to try to resolve these problems. As I mentioned, some get resolved and then new ones crop up. So we've only really just notified the judge that we needed to go back before the court to discuss the problems and to seek additional relief. So I think the judge is learning about all this for the first time too, but it'll be the role of our attorneys to explain it all to him, point out just how serious the problem is, how much we have tried to get the state to resolve these things, the fact that they're not getting resolved, and that there is a need for more concrete action at this point.
And your attorney on this is Lynette?
Lynette Labinger is the local attorney in the case. As I mentioned, there's a national welfare rights organization that has great attorneys that handle these types of issues all across the country.
Do you think her shyness will adversely impact your effort to get this resolved?
She is one of the best attorneys in the state, and it's great to have her working on this.
Well, listen, Steve, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate the update. We saw your statement getting issued earlier today. I think we published it. Obviously, it's a critical issue. Last night, we've been covering the pension fund collapse at St. Joe's Hospital, and somewhere around 1,000 retirees were over there last night, sort of nobody paying attention. Arlene Violet gave the story of one 99-year-old retiree who served at the hospital for 50 years. Her payments monthly now, pre-cut, proposed cut of 40% to her benefits, is $209. So, I think we can do better as a state, and need to put some of these folks ahead of others. So thank you very much. I appreciate